Hello and welcome to episode 106 of my podcast all about knitting and crochet and my yarn shop here in Wiesbaden, Germany. I'm Kiko and today is August 9th, 2021. And today I'm wearing my finished vacation or holiday shawl, that's what I call it. The original name I can't pronounce. It's a pattern by Lucy Haig out of her Celtic cable shawls. And the yarn I used is from Austria, and I bought it when we were on vacation there. And then in another vacation, I started knitting, and then it took a very long time, and now it's finally done. Last week, I showed it off as a finished project, and today it's washed and blocked, and even more beautiful than last week. If worn like this, I think you can see the cable pattern really clearly. And that was also nicely visible before it was blocked, but now it's still as beautiful, I think. But now the edging is a lot more beautiful than before the blocking, and you can see these spikes or whatever you call them. Yeah, I like it a lot. I'm really happy. It did grow quite a bit in blocking, so now it's not huge, but it's nice and big, and I'm really happy with it. I just love the pattern. It was a lot of work, it took a lot of concentration, but I think it was worth the effort, and I'm really, really happy with the finished thing. And I'm also wearing my Hitofude jacket. That's the second time I knit the pattern. It's a pattern that you can knit with one ball of yarn without having to cut the yarn at all. So I used lace Meise. It's the lace yarn by Wollmeise, and it was a 300 gram ball of yarn with lace yarn. And yep, I had two ends to weave in, the beginning and the end. I still have yarn left over. I didn't use all the 300 grams. I was thinking of using the whole thing, but then it would have been very, very long, and I didn't want it too long in the end. So but that's the two things I'm wearing today, both of which I like a lot, and I'm really happy that the colors go together and I can wear those two things together. Yeah, that's what I'm wearing. That was quick. On to finished objects, and my finished object for today, I'm very happy as well, are my blue stockings by Kate Davies. And they're basically finished knitting and done and everything. There's just one little thing that's left to be done. I'll show you in a minute. But I thought it's quite funny that last week my finished object was the shawl that was done, but it wasn't blocked yet. And now with these stockings, there's something I want to show you. These stockings were started at the toe, so I knit them toe up. And I used a 100 gram ball of Opal yarn in this beautiful blue color. And I used both ends of the ball. So I didn't make two balls of it in the beginning, but I just used the one ball and just used both ends of the yarn. And then I knit until I got to the middle of the ball of yarn. So I have not yet separated the two stockings from each other. But when I was at that point, I was pretty sure I couldn't knit half a round on both of the stockings. So I stopped knitting with this color, and I just added a little bit of the darker blue. I knit one round in this darker blue, and then I cast off using Jenny's surprisingly stretchy bind off, I think is what it's called. And I'm really happy with that. And the interesting thing is that last week, before I was finished with the knitting on these stockings, I thought I had so little yarn left that I was only going to finish the pattern and maybe do a bit of ribbing. And then I finished the pattern, and I knit ribbing, and I knit and I knit and I knit. And at one point I felt this yarn was never going to finish, and I was going to knit forever on this ribbing. Yeah, but finally I got to the end, and I just left it hanging just for fun. So now that I've shown it on the video, I'm going to cut the yarn in the middle and weave in the two ends, and then my stockings are done. It looks a bit funny here because my sock blockers only go this far, and I cut some cardboard to put in here so you can see what these look like. I have pictures on Ravelry where I'm wearing the stockings. I might post some on Instagram as well. Then you can see that they fit me perfectly. I'm really happy with the length and the size and everything. I decreased a few more stitches around here. I think you're supposed to decrease 2 stitches per sock, but I decreased, I think, 3 on this side and 3 on the other side, just to make sure the ribbing is a bit tighter, hoping that these stockings won't slide down the leg just quite as quickly as most of my other stockings do. Yeah, so that's my finished object for today. Really happy with these. I'm not really looking forward to colder weather, but once the weather does get colder, I'll be really happy to wear these. So that was that. Here. Then on to works in progress. And last week I was a bit better in working on more of my projects. That means that on some of them I only worked a little bit, but still I can show off more than last week. Again, not all of my projects, but I still have too many of those. But I'll talk about that again a bit later. So the socks. I'll go on with the socks. The socks that I worked on most are the Sweet Rose socks from the Sockmadness, and that's the second time I'm knitting them. And I finished the knitting on these, but they're not a finished object yet because I still need to embroider the flowers that go into these reverse stockinette feels. To me, the pattern looks a little bit like picture frames, and the frames need the flower in there. And my idea was to embroider yellow, orange and red flowers, and I'm going to use beads the way the pattern calls for, but I'll probably not embroider the little leaves that were supposed to be part of the pattern. And as I'm not knitting them for the Sockmadness anymore, I can do the flowers any way I like. And also with this pair, every sock only has 4 of those frames and will get 4 embroidered flowers. The original has twice the height here, so you have like 8 of these frames. But those were really long socks, and I wasn't too happy with the embroidering, so I thought 4 per sock is enough. So I hope to get these done this week, and then that might be my finished object for next week. We'll see about that. The next Sockmadness socks that I was knitting on are the Madeline Socks. Those were, I think, the second to last round socks. And I finished the first one. I started the cuff of the second straight away and then let them lie for a while. But now I've added the first couple of rounds of the pattern. I think I need to knit 4 more rounds, and then I'm going to fold this over like this. And then I'm going to knit the live stitches together with the cast on edge so that this will be a folded cuff and will be nice and neat. I won't have to sew anything because I'll just knit it together. And my plan with these socks was to try and knit 10 rounds every week. So last week I didn't quite manage the 10. I think these are 6 rounds. So I'll try for 14 rounds next week. But I remember that this knitting together with the cast on edge takes quite a bit of time. So I may not get all 14 rounds done, but we'll see. I'll at least try to get the cuff done, and then I'll see what I can manage. Yeah, that's another Opal yarn. This is out of their Rainforest series and the bright green solid color. And the third pair of socks I'm knitting is another Rainforest color from Opal. This is out of the current series from this year. And I'm knitting a pair of socks for my husband for his birthday. That's already passed, but that's okay. and it's just a very plain sock with the rib pattern on top and stockinette on the bottom. And I just did a bit of, I changed from the rib to the stockinette in a, yeah, gradually, let's put it that way. I love the color, I think it's very beautiful, and the knitting is very simple, so that's something that I can do while I'm busy with other things. And just added a few rounds, nothing much, but I did knit on it. So these are the socks that I have that I'm working on at the moment. I have several socks lined up that I really want to start, but the rule at the moment is finish 2 projects, start 1. Let's see how long I can live with that, but at least I'll try not to have more than 3 pairs of socks on the go. So once I finish 1 pair, I might start a pair of socks without finishing something else, but maybe I can finish something small. We'll see. The next project I'm knitting out of sock yarn that I usually show at this time is my glacier dress that I'm knitting from a pattern by Yukiko. I haven't worked on that. I did a lot the week before, so that was on pause. But I continued knitting on the Heartstring pullover, which is another pattern by Yukiko, and it's this kid's size pullover. I'm using 2 colors by Opal out of their 3-ply series. So it's a very lightweight sock yarn, and I'm holding them together to make a DK weight yarn. And last week I showed you that I started the yoke and I put the sleeves and the front and back and everything together. Last week I actually didn't knit. No, I didn't knit. I sewed the stitches that you leave under the arm and from the front and back. I sewed them together in Kitchener stitch, so you can't really tell. There's a seam, it looks as if it was knitted, but it means that the needle wasn't hanging here, and I think it's more comfortable to knit without the stitch holder holding the stitches. So I seamed those little 2 seams, and also it means once I'm finished with the knitting, I'm almost done. I just have to weave in the ends. At the end, I think I even wove in all the ends that were hanging there. Yep. So that's a pullover. So far I've only knit straight up, and I think I'm at the point or almost at the point where the first decrease round comes. So it's not a raglan pullover, it's a pullover with a round yoke. That means I have rows where I decrease a lot of stitches, and then I go straight again, and then I decrease several stitches in one round, and I'm just about to do the first decrease round. So that's the kids pullover. And then I'm knitting 2 other things out of sock yarn. I think the older one is the square shrug that I'm knitting, and so the idea to knit a square and sew 2 little seams to have a shrug is not new, but I picked this lace pattern to go into the square, and I picked it so that the increase lines within the pattern and the increases for the square would be parallel, and the pattern wouldn't be interrupted. That was the main objective with this pattern. And I added a few rounds. This is at a stage now where it's difficult to tell, especially as I didn't put in a longer cable, it's difficult to see how far I got. But I can show you that the first 100 grams are almost used up. But as the stockings showed, even if there's not a lot left, there's still a lot of knitting to be done. But this is a Opal yarn 100 Wasser. So the colors in the yarn are inspired by this painting by 100 Wasser, who was an artist. Oh, it's the wrong way around. I think he was a German artist, but he worked internationally. Yep. So that's the square shrug. Just need to, put a lot of work in that too. But now that I know the pattern, it's established, I know what it wants, how it works, I just need to put time into knitting this. And the other thing I'm knitting is the Town Square Shawl by Romy. And I'm using Opal subscription yarn, abo yarn. It's that color. And I have 2 of these. Usually you only get 1 per color, but I swapped 2 of the colors that I wasn't too keen on with this and another red one with a friend. So I have 2 of these and I can knit a bigger shawl. And the Town Square Shawl by Romy is knit in, so you start at the upper edge of the shawl and you knit a triangle by doing short rows. So every row there's 1 more stitch that I'm not knitting, so I get this triangular shape. It's another thing that's difficult to show while the stitches are still on the needle, but yeah, I've added a few pattern repeats to that. Let's see if I can show the lace pattern. This is another thing that's going to show up once it's been blocked. So this will be a shawl where blocking will make a big difference. But I'm only knitting on, I think, this many stitches right now. So there's quite a lot of stitches that I'm not working anymore. And as soon as I've finished the triangle, then I'll go back to knitting all the stitches. And I think I'll also increase a lot of stitches then. And then I'm going to knit a border pattern from the top down as well. Yeah, so that's quite an interesting construction. I'm still thinking of using the bright green that I'm using also for these socks to knit a few rows in between the first triangle and the border pattern, just for fun, and maybe even cast off in the green. Not too sure about that yet, but that's the plan I have at the moment. Yeah, beautiful shawl. And I'm knitting this as part of the pattern battle in the Opal Abo group. So everybody in that pattern battle is using this color from the Opal subscription, but everybody has to knit a different pattern. Most people knit socks, so you have loads of different socks. If you ever look for a sock pattern, go and look there. But I like to knit other things if possible. So this time I'm knitting this shawl, which will show the yarn in a completely different way than socks do. Yeah, so these are the sock yarn projects. Then on to other things. Yeah, let's go to the crochet bits. Oh no, let's do the gnome. This is going to be another gnome by Sarah Shearer from Imagine Landscapes. I've knit this gnome twice before, I think, and this is going to be a bigger one. I also want to knit a couple of smaller ones. The pattern is called Here We Gnome Again. It was the first gnome pattern, I think, that I bought from Sarah, and ever since I bought this, I've knit all the mystery gnomes, waiting for the next one. She's already working on it, but this is still one of my favorite patterns. So when a pupil of mine wanted to learn to knit this, I knit along with her, and I've now finished the hat. It's an acrylic yarn by Schachenmeier, Bravo Quick and Easy. It's a new yarn in my shop, so I thought that's a good idea to try and knit something with it and see how it works up. And I like it. I think it's going to be a really nice, cuddly gnome. Yeah, the hat's done, so the body is going to be next. Yeah, that's a little in-between project. Now on to my crochet projects. I'm knitting on my second version of the Carnaby crochet long pullover or cardigan, and last week I had started the second sleeve and I continued crocheting on that a little bit. I think last week I was still on the light blue, and then I added the purple, the 1 row of purple, and now I'll do 4 rows of this darker blue, and then that'll be it. I brought the first sleeve just to show you the difference in the color placement. So with the first sleeve, I changed color every other row, and here I sort of organized the colors in a different way. I think it looks funny. I'm still happy with how I planned this. So just need to finish the sleeve and then start assembling the pieces together. And the other crochet project is is the pullover I want to make out of 4 granny squares crocheted out of opal yarn. And I wanted to see what 100 grams of colorful opal yarn would look like when you crochet a granny square. And this is it. This is exactly 100 grams crocheted on a 4.5 millimeter needle. I'm a very tight crocheter, so if you are a loose crocheter, you could use a smaller needle, but I'm really happy with the drape of this and the feel of this. And I finished crocheting the first 100 grams, and I did not allow myself to go on crocheting because I wanted to show you what this looks like, even though I could have left in the marker and I could have said this is how far I got with the first ball. But I think once you continue crocheting around, it's really hard to imagine what this square looks like. So yeah, this is going to be the front or back of my pullover, probably the back. And I could use it the way it is. It'd be just big enough, but that's not what I'm going for. I want a really big square and a really big and loose and oversized pullover. So I'm going to use the second or the next ball of yarn in that color, and I'll just continue crocheting until I think it's big enough. And I think last time I was talking about the fact that one of the patterns I was looking at has the neckline in the front square so that the pullover is asymmetric and the front would be shorter and the back would be longer. But then I have another pattern where the neckline is just in between the front and back and it's more symmetrical. And at the moment, I tend more to the symmetric version. But as I said, I'll finish one of the pieces for the front or back, and then I'll make a decision and see what I'll do. Yeah, so that's the crochet pullover, big granny square. I love the way the colors come together at certain places. So like this corner is all red and white, and then there's just mostly the lilac and blue, and then there's some stripy sections where it always switches between the green and the lilac and the blue. So it's really interesting. And I did the beginning of round in the middle of the side of the square, and I decided for the next square I'm going to do the beginning and end of the round in the corner, just to see what it looks like, what the effect's going to be. Yeah, just like to change things up a bit every now and then. So that's that. And then I'm going to show you a very sad crochet project. When I finished the vacation shawl, I decided that I want to work on an old project at all times. And I forgot that the square shrug is also one of the old projects that I showed in my video with the unfinished objects. So I looked at something else I wanted to work on and finish, and I decided, as I'm enjoying crochet so much at the moment, I wanted to finish this project. This is crocheted out of Hansa Farm lace alpaca yarn, and I started this 4 years ago. I used this green lace yarn. It's a pure baby alpaca. It's a beautiful yarn, and I crocheted this square. And if you really pay attention to my projects, you might remember the white and grey summer top that I crocheted a few weeks back, or that I finished a few weeks back and showed here, and it's the same pattern. It certainly looks completely different if you crochet with lace yarn or whether you crochet with a DK weight yarn held double. But it's still the same pattern, and that was another reason that I wanted to continue working on this, because I just crocheted that top and I kind of remembered the pattern, and I thought I'll do that. And what I did 4 years ago is I crocheted one of those squares and I washed and blocked it to see how big it would be. And my plan was to make a little vest. This was supposed to be the back, 4 squares. And then I added a 5th square. This was supposed to be the lower part of the front. And then I was going to add another square in between here. So that be the front would be 2 squares, the other front would be 2 squares. So 3 more squares and I would have finished the little vest. Yeah, and I already started the new square. I didn't do a lot. I just started, and then a friend came by and I told her about this and I showed it to her. And while I held it up to show her, I noticed something horrible. And every time I look for it, I can't find it. It's probably because I don't want to see it. Here we go. Look at this. I have no idea what happened. So I had this project. So I had the Crochet Square and the ball of yarn I wanted to use. They were in a wooden cup that you can use as a to put your ball of yarn in. And I had it on top of my shelf. So it's in the open. It's not inside a cupboard or anything. So I don't know whether a moth got to it or not. It's the only hole in this project, and I haven't had any other moths anywhere. And as I said, there was no other yarn, no other knitting near this because it was on top of the shelf. But this is just a huge big hole, and there's no way I can fix this. There's several rounds affected, and if I wanted to save this garment, I would have to undo, or have to somehow get this square, I have to somehow get it off the other squares. And I'm not sure I can do that. I don't know how to do that. And I was so frustrated when I saw that. After 4 years, I finally pick it up and then it's broken. And I decided I'm just not finishing this. I'm just going to throw this out. This is about 50 grams of yarn. So it's one ball of yarn that I've wasted. It's not that much. Sure, there's a lot of work that I put in here 4 years ago, but it's not my typical color anyway. It's a beautiful color. It would have been fun to have something green for a change, but I can still do something else some other time. But I'm not going to fix this. I'm not going to get these squares apart. So I'll just throw this away. I will undo the bit that I started, and I will try and forget about this and move on with my other projects. I have so many unfinished objects I can do with one less, and I'll just throw this out. It doesn't happen very often to me that I don't finish stuff. Sometimes after, if I leave something too long, or I realize it's not working out the way I wanted, I will undo it, I will frog it. It does happen, but it's very rare that I throw something away. Maybe it's the first time, I don't know. Yeah, that was quite frustrating. On to nicer things. My knit-along that we're doing, or one of the knit-alongs that we're doing on my channel, is the Optic blanket. By the way, the other knit-along is for dishcloths. I still plan to do a few more because I want to have some more. I have some interesting patterns that people have suggested in the Ravelry group. So I still want to make a few more, but then I'll close that knit-along and we'll move on to something else. And that something else is probably going to be a little shawl. It's a free pattern. It's available in German. I forgot to check whether it's available in English. I'll let you know when we start with the knit-along. The pattern is supposed to be, you're supposed to have 100 grams of sock yarn or sock weight yarn. You can also knit it bigger as far as I know. But just to give you an idea if you want to start looking for yarn. And then nearer the time, I'll give you more details about what we're going to knit then. But on to the knit along that's going to run for the rest of the year, and that's the Optic blanket. And as every week, I added one more square to the blanket, and right now I'm working with these solid colors, and I added a blue square. This color goes beautifully with everything I'm wearing today and with half my wardrobe. This is not sock yarn. It's the first square that's not knit with sock yarn, but Opal doesn't have a DK weight sock yarn in this color, and I really wanted a light blue and a middle blue. So those two squares will not be sock yarn, but this is a DK weight yarn by Wolle Rödel. It's called All Round. Not sure whether they still sell it or whether they have discontinued it. I don't know, but I still have some of that lying at home. So I use this to continue my rainbow square. So there'll be white in the middle and a rainbow of colors around. So the next square is going to be a bit of a darker blue, and then the last square is going to be a dark purple. So that's the Optic blanket for today. And now very quickly I have some new yarn to show you and a new project in combination with that new yarn. So one thing I quickly want to show you is the new anniversary series by Opal. They are celebrating their 25th anniversary this year, and they had a competition last year where children were asked to design or to draw pictures for the ball bands of the yarn. And then Opal picked 8 of these and dyed the yarn according to the ball bands. So I thought that's a really funny idea, and they have really nice and happy colors. So this is a really bright one, and then this is another picture and the yarn that goes with it, and another one with the typical like crayon colors. I love that one. Then there's a beautiful blue one. The children that drew these pictures were different ages, and the ball bands always tell you how old the child was. So this was a 7-year-old child, and I won't tell you all the ages, but just to let you know they're different ages. So this is a 2-year-old. Just putting some colors on paper, but I really like the yarn. And then we have a green one with a nice picture, and this has been the favorite in my shop. There's only a few balls left in that color. And then there's the last one is more neutral one, typical kind of gray mix, but also very nice. So that's one of the things I wanted to show you. I know it's a lot harder in outside Germany to get the yarn, but I know that several shops overseas sell Opal yarn, so I'm sure you can get hold of it if you really want to. And the other yarn I quickly want to show you, I'm not sure you can get that outside of Germany, but that's a little new German company called Westfalen Voller, and that's a young woman who decided that it was not a very good idea that most of the German yarn is sent outside of Germany and then processed and turned into yarn, and then it's re-imported to Germany. And she said it doesn't make sense, and let's try and do everything in Germany. And that's what she's doing with her company, and this is the first yarn that her company has produced. It's a pure merino yarn, but it has a kind of rustic feel to it. It's not dyed, so there's 4 natural colors. It's the beige, the off-white, and a light and a dark grey. And I ordered the yarn. I think the cream yarn you can get in 2 sizes or 2 weights, that's the word. And I think it has 220 meters for 100 grams. So I think it's like a DK weight, even though she puts the needle size, she recommends a needle size of 2.5 to 3.5. I think that's a fairly small needle. And I certainly had to start a project with the new yarn. That's why I allowed myself to start a project, even though I hadn't finished 2 things. But because this is a new yarn and I want to sell it, I have to knit with it. These are the 2 grey colours, and that's what I chose to knit with. And I'm knitting another hat with the pattern Prism by Tin Can Knits. I knit a hat like that before, a few years ago, and yeah, so I started doing that, and I'm using a 4mm needle because I'm a really tight knitter, and this seems to be, for me, a good gauge to knit a hat. It's fairly tight, but it's not too stiff, and I think this is going to be a beautifully warm hat. Yeah, and I'm looking forward to seeing what the yarn feels like and looks like once it's washed. I'm pretty sure it's going to be a lot softer then. Yeah, and I just need to know, so I had to knit something, and a hat is always something quick. And I thought if I use color work, I can show off more than one color. Maybe the next hat, I'll do a hat in the off-white using cables, because I'm pretty sure that cables will look fantastic with this kind of yarn. Yeah, so this is my newest project. A quick hat, should be done by next week, just to see how this yarn works up. That's all I wanted to show you and talk to you about this week. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!